When the weather improved, we saw a huge wall of ice and a city behind it. The mystery of the lost 1961 Polar Explorers Expedition. So, this is a story I came across recently, and I think it's very interesting and very much related to the content of this page. So, let's begin. Today, I'd like to talk about an interesting topic. It touches on perhaps the most mysterious continent. As you may have guessed, we're talking about Antarctica. In 1991, Wal Reichard, a former polar explorer, decided to tell an incredible story from his life. Before getting straight into his story, I'd like to point out an important detail in the context of this post. There is a widespread opinion among researchers that modern satellite maps conceal certain areas of Antarctica, as well as parts of Australia. What does this mean? Hypothetically, according to their reasoning, this is how one can hide what shouldn't be visible to the public. In other words, technically, humanity has the capacity to map the entire Earth. When we're looking for a building, we can switch the map to satellite mode and see how it looks like from Earth. We can zoom in and we can zoom out. We can see any particular part we want to around the world. But when we try to do this with Antarctica, only the coastline and a small portion of the entire frozen continent is mapped. Why? The official explanation is that beyond 60 degrees south of Antarctica, there's nothing but ice, and it doesn't make sense to spend money on a very comprehensive mapping of the entire region. Anyone can believe this viewpoint, but some are not convinced. Some allege that such a conclusion is only an attempt to diminish interest in Antarctica, as if there's nothing of interest there, nothing but ice, no discussion. It's better to turn to the opinion of Wal Reichard, who undertook an expedition to Antarctica between 1960 and 1961. He says, and I quote, I was already 48 years old when I went to the South Pole. I understood that it would be a very difficult, many dissuaded me, but becoming one of the few who visited there outweighed all the persuasions of friends and family. I am now 78 years old, and I believe this is the best age to reveal this information I have carefully concealed for the past 30 years ever since my exhibition. Ask someone what Antarctica is, and they will probably tell you that it's just a bunch of snow, it's just ice, it's very cold weather stations, and nothing more. All pretty boring stuff. It seems that everything is like that, but what we saw points to a much different perspective of the world. When we returned from Antarctica, I argued with management about the ban on telling the truth, but there was nothing I could do about it. According to the documents I signed, I wasn't allowed to give interviews for the last 30 years. As far as I know, this ban was automatically extended for another 20 years without my knowledge, but I don't care. 78 is a good age. If I leave this world tomorrow, no one will know anything, and at least now someone will listen. So what's the story? During our year in Antarctica, we went on 12 expeditions. 11 of them were absolutely great, but one was especially memorable. We had to survey the mountains for caves. We hopped on snowmobiles and set off a mission. We successfully reached the researched area, but while we were there, the weather took a sharp turn for the worst. It started snowing heavily and intensely. The blizzard was so severe that instead of returning to the station, we got lost. Visibility was near zero. The snow quickly covered our tracks, and the amount of fuel in the tanks was dwindling rapidly. We didn't have the navigation equipment we have now, so we had to take risks. We chose a direction and got on the snowmobiles. As it turned out, we were very far from the station, and I mean very far. The storm subsided just as the fuel ran out. You know the saying, after the storm comes the sunshine. That's exactly what happened. The sun came out, the storm passed, and we saw something absolutely incredible. We saw enormous buildings of a metropolis right in the middle of a frozen desert. It was impossible to get there. A massive wall of ice separated us from it. Insurmountable blocks of ice, a huge ice wall behind which stood dozens of skyscrapers as if I was looking at a city. I've been to Washington, I've been to New York, I've been to Los Angeles in my life, and even those cities paled in comparison to what we had seen. As if we had been shown the scenery of a science fiction film, but it wasn't a scenery, it was real. When we returned to the station and reported what had happened to management, we sent us new snowmobiles off duty, and some high ranking officials arrived and told us we had to sign some papers. The same ones that prohibited the dissemination of information. They didn't answer any of our questions. Once they told me that if I broke the vow of silence after signing those papers that they had told me to sign, the officer said I could kiss my life goodbye. It wasn't a threat, more so a warning. Naturally, no information about this was broadcast on television or radio. We were simply advised to remember that it was just a hallucination in the context of the freezing. Is that possible? Of course not. We all saw the same thing. There are collective hallucinations, but they are very different. Although here we all saw the same thing. There's a freaking city out there. I don't know who lives there, billionaires or whatever, but it's off limits. After the interview, Walt Reichard lived another 12 years of his life, but in a psychiatric hospital. He was admitted just 3 weeks after the interview. Whether this was due to the disclosure of classified information he was told not to reveal, or if his mental health truly failed, remains a mystery, as does indeed the existence of an unknown metropolis behind a wall of ice in Antarctica.